So I am going to turn this microphone over to one of my favorite people in the whole world, Matt Smido, who has agreed to be our moderator for this panel this afternoon, and he's going to take care of introductions. Matt Smido has been with the city's Office of Education since it opened, and is currently serving as not the inaugural director, the interim director. And one of the reasons I like Matt so much is, well, he's just a really great, nice person, but he's a massive advocate for early childhood in this city. So we are thrilled to have you here with us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. You have a very limited worldview then if I'm one of your favorite people. So I would also like to thank the Crane Center for bringing it to my attention that I need to update my LinkedIn photo. I was really shocked when I saw it on the program. And also, that was taken the day after my son was born, and you cropped him out. So anyway, good afternoon, everybody. Again, thanks for being here. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Crane Center. Tanny, for everything that you guys do. As Laura said, we're having our panel discussion with our local advocates and experts on how we're going to increase quality early learning in the city and in the county. So you have a minute each, because it's written right here, that Jamie gave me. So can you just tell us real quickly who you are, what organization you represent, and what you do and what you're working on?
Absolutely. Is this on? Can you hear me? Great. My name is Elizabeth Brown. I'm a Columbus City Council member, and I want to thank the Crane Center for this event and for asking me to be here, because I always learn a great deal from my interactions with the Crane Center, so I'm excited for this afternoon. Also, just pro tip, if you are not on the Crane Center newsletter that Jamie O'Leary sends out, you are missing out. It is not only informative, but also funny, and I appreciate you very much, Jamie. Thank you. So I serve as President Pro Tem of the Columbus City Council, but more importantly, I serve as chair of our Education Committee. And the Education Department in the City of Columbus, I get to work with Matt Smido there. The Education Department is really focused on early childhood. The K through 12 system is through Columbus City Schools. Our focus on early childhood is, since 2014, we've actually appropriated $32 million to Early Start Columbus, which provides high quality early education. We've provided high-quality early education to 4,500 Columbus children, and I'll get more into that, but just to briefly explain what I do, my role as a city council member is to do things that help lift up people all across this city, and there are lots of ways that we do that day in and day out, but I think there is not a more important way in which we can invest in our city than in our youngest residents. Our babies and our kids are they are our investment in the future. Right? If you spend $1 investing in a kid today, you are investing in your city for the future. We all know that. It's also an investment in today's city, in today's workforce, because I can get up every day and do my job knowing that my kids are safe. When I drop them off at pre-K, at daycare, I know that they are getting a high-quality early learning experience, and I can do my job better because of that, and I can count on their thriving because of it. I am not the only parent in Columbus that deserves peace of mind, right? We should want for all kids what we want for our own kids, and every parent should have that peace of mind. So I really view what I do as a city council member in the many ways in which we invest in our city. I view the work that I get to do in early childhood as some of the most critical. So thank you for having me here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Dr. Gina Ginn, and I am the Chief Executive Officer for Columbus Early Learning Centers. We serve a little over 300 children each year here in Columbus, stretching from our 4 locations that service the neighborhoods of Linden all the way to Main Street, as well as 2 different home visiting programs that we operate throughout the city of Columbus. Our organization is over 130 years old here in our great city, and I'm excited and thankful to be here to talk from the provider's perspective on high quality, what it has meant to our organization, what it means to children and families, and thanks for having us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? All right, good. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Joy Bivens. I am the director of Franklin County Department of Job and Family Services. I am appointed by the Franklin County Commissioners, Commissioner Marilyn Brown, Commissioner Kevin Boyce, and Commissioner John O'Grady. One of the largest responsibilities, or a couple of responsibilities I have, is I oversee the administration of all the publicly funded child care children in Franklin County. We have about 350,000 customers that receive anything between Medicaid, workforce services, child care services, SNAP. Currently, right now in our system, we have 27,000 young people who receive publicly funded child care. When I took the seat 4 years ago, I was told on my first day that there is a legislative mandate that every center is to be stepped up. So I went to my commissioners and asked them if they would designate dollars out of my $96 million budget to assist in providing additional contracts, additional training in our community. And we'll get into that a little later. But many of you serve as parents in the community that receive publicly funded childcare and are reliant on our public assistance benefits. The other thing I work on for the county is I oversee the Franklin County Poverty Blueprint Plan, which plays a huge role in aligning systems so that families can move up the economic mobility ladder, which plays a large part in people being reliant on public assistance benefits. In that, as I look at our early learners, one of my main goals is to ensure that we develop not just systems, but equitable systems. When you look at the children who receive publicly funded childcare, when I looked across the landscape, 68% of my 27,000 are children of color who live in the lowest asset neighborhoods in our county. I cannot overlook that. So every time I get an opportunity to talk, I'm talking about developing equitable systems so everyone can have an opportunity to get stepped up collectively and equitably together. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Allison Russo, running a little behind because we had a delayed session today. So I just came from the House floor over at the State House. I represent the 24th District, which is here in Franklin County. And my interest in this space is twofold. Number one, it's personal. I'm a mom of 3 kids. I actually have a 3-year-old who is in daycare as we speak. But also from a legislator policy perspective, I see childcare in a number of different lenses. Number one, certainly in preparing children and getting them ready for kindergarten and getting them ready for the future in this state. But also I see this as a workforce issue. If we want parents, and particularly women, to fully participate in the workforce, we must have reliable, affordable, quality childcare for our children. Not only getting individuals and parents into the workforce, but also in those child care providers and the value that those providers bring to the workforce. So we're looking at this in a number of different ways from a state policy perspective. I also happen to co-chair the Joint Legislative Children's Caucus. So this has become one of our priority issues for the Children's Caucus. So these are members from both the Senate and the House to work on these issues. And in fact, tomorrow we are hosting a legislative policy forum at the State House on this issue of child care. So we think that there is a lot of room to be better at the state level in using some of our policy levers to improve access and affordability.
Thank you. Okay, Director Bivens, you mentioned a little bit about your work in Step Up to Quality. Can you tell us what you and JFS is doing right now to help increase the quality of early learning in the county?
Okay, good. So I'm going to kind of try to go off of my notes, but my job today is to make sure that you understand what we do, but also try not to get fired so I don't say the wrong thing, because all I know how to do is be me. One of the things that we're doing currently, we've invested through the commissioners. So again, I have a $96 million budget. $30 million of that go into contracts that I present to the commissioners to approve for nonprofit organizations for workforce programs, after-school programs, enrichment programs. The commissioners, when I went to them a couple of years ago, I said, this was a non-funded mandate. We needed to provide additional resources to our providers. So they approved $1.3 million from my budget so far for outreach and training. How many of you seen our commercials? They were out there. We're going to start doing more. We're going to put more of those out. If you need our communication toolkit, Bart can get it to you. We have commercials out there that work with providers and parents. We've also increased the amount of Step Up to Quality training, working with our providers such as Action for Children, and also we work closely with Future Ready. We've provided an additional $750,000 in that capacity, in addition to, again, another $611,000 to support our providers. So our work in this space is currently we've developed an app. We have online training, and we do in-house training in our center. And basically what it is we work with a couple of consultants, and they help providers who have no stars in developing that package to interface with the state so they can get to the state in order to be credentialed. When I first took we took on this task, I think there was this perception that all you had to do was fill out the package or the binder or whatever that they had. And that was not it. And I think our providers understood that very quickly. But currently right now, we've trained about over 300 providers. I believe 197 of them have received stars since we've been working with them, in addition to working with our other partners. But we provide training, intensive training, because we really want to make sure that we meet that deadline.
Thank you, Director. Now, the push to get everyone stepped up by 2020 is so important, and so the importance of quality is essential. Mm-hmm. If we're in the community and we're talking about quality and we need to bring people around to that topic and so they can understand why it's so important, what should we be saying?
If I can be, I'm going to allow my smartest person next to me answer that question, because I know that there's a different language that she would use and I would use. We did an awareness campaign with our parents, and basically what they said quality was safe, nurturing, caring environment, right? Mm-hmm. That's quality to us. Mm-hmm. I would say, because I know you're going to answer this question more eloquently than I do, I would say, as we're having these conversations as leaders and providers, when we say things like we don't have enough quality seats, can we pause on that statement? Because that's a value judgment statement. I can't tell you if we don't have enough quality seats, because every provider hasn't gone through the process to be vetted to see if they are quality or not. What you will find is many of them are already doing some of the work that would deem them as quality, but we have to allow them to get through the process.
Thank you. Dr. Gant, ironically, you're next. Do you want to answer that real quick, and then I have a couple other for you?
Sure. So I think, Joy, I think you've said it well. I think that we do need to pause, right? Because there are so many providers, especially our home providers, who have been doing this much longer than most of us in this room, who are really presenting quality, but on a much smaller scale. And so I think that giving them the opportunity to be able to show us as a community what quality looks like is something that we can't forget about. And so one of the things that we've done as an organization is try to help support home providers in anything that they might need to help them be able to prove through documentation to the state that they are doing quality work. And that is an enormous part of the sector that I think that we sometimes don't give credence to that we should. In center-based care, it is definitely much easier to document and to check the lists off and to go through and show that we are meeting all of those things for quality. But I think that we forget about those home providers, and that's something that is very important and should be really important to our entire community.
Thank you. Dr. Ginn, that's such a good point. I was recently at the Action for Children. I know Eric's here, I saw him. Their CDA graduation ceremony last week, and they had these testimonials from teachers who had gone through the program, and I'm assuming this person was a home provider. But she had said that she was grateful for the CDA course because now she knew what these children needed, and before, she just had them doing quiet time or something. So that's something that really resonated with me. So Dr. Gant, a follow-up question. As the director of 4 child care organizations, early learning organizations, you see this, you fight this battle every day. How do you maintain quality? How do you make it a priority?
Thank you for that very loaded question, Matt.
I didn't write these.
I think that something that will resonate with the entire room is it's very difficult to maintain quality. It's very difficult. I think that we are privileged as an organization because we do have multiple centers and we do have the ability to pull from a broad list of resources as an organization to help us maintain quality and consistency across all of our locations. But it's very difficult to maintain quality. And I think that there needs to be recognition by our community and recognition by policymakers that because we are increasing quality, which is the best thing for children, and it is what is needed in our community, it is not without its faults, but maybe that's too harsh of a word. That because we're increasing quality, we're then increasing the competition that we have to compete for staff and for resources and for all of those things that make what you need to prove as quality. And so we are now competing with all of the school districts and so many other things to maintain a workforce that can prove that what we do is of quality. But I think that the other piece of it is that there still is not the financial resources being input into the system that allows us to be able to keep and maintain those quality, high-performing staff. So the best I can say is that it's difficult and that it is work that we do every single day to maintain quality, and it's something that we are ensuring that our staff are getting the right training and continuing down that road every single day. Because once you get the stars, you can never let up. That it's a daily investment in your organization, in the people that work for you, in your staff, in your center directors, to maintain quality.
Thank you, Dr. Gideon. And you made a really good point where creating and maintaining quality could be a little easier for you because you have 4 centers and economies of scale say that you are able to do that. I know that we work with some providers in our office that are much smaller than you. It's a one person shop, or they may have 50 kids. One that I'm thinking of is on the Near East Side. They don't have a lot of resources. How much harder is it for them to maintain or even to get quality?
I don't know how they do it. I mean, really, from where we were when I first started as an organization to where we are today, if we were where we were 4 years ago, I don't think we could maintain it. And I give so much credit to all of those providers that are only servicing one center, because the amount of work and time and investment and all of those things, it really does take away from the children. And when you have less people and less resources, it is a full-time, 24-hour-a-day job.
Thank you. And I think that goes to Director Bivens and Action for Children and Future Ready for the work that they're doing to help these centers get stepped up to quality. So I think we owe them all a lot of our gratitude. Councilmember Brown, you mentioned that you are the chair of the Education Committee, which means that you approve everything that my office does. So if it seems like I'm sucking up, I am. Also, did you hear Director Bivens said she has a $96 million budget? So,
Are you asking for me?
yes, yeah. Anything you can do about that. So tell us what the City of Columbus is doing to increase quality early learning.
Absolutely. So, it starts with our annual budget, which is not $96 million in education. It starts with our scholarships for kids, essentially. We serve close to 1,000 kids each year, and the education department has done an excellent job working to braid funding, last dollar in, so that we're really stretching the funding and trying to fund quality. It's really it's what it's based on. And then over the years, it's become apparent that not only are these scholarships to fund quality important, but also, teachers are the critical piece of the equation in all of this. Teachers are everything. And so we do an annual investment with or as much money as we can on an annual basis to work with Action for Children and Columbus State on the CDA program to get more teachers their CDA. And to date, we've served approximately 250 teachers in the CDA training because that is a direct investment in the classroom today, right? And it helps kids when we're able to help teachers go through that program. So that is a key investment. We also help develop the early learning teacher pipeline with OSU, helping early learning teachers with associate degrees get bachelor's degrees. We look at our work now as it currently stands to be really focused there on making sure kids are getting access to that high quality slot and then supporting, teachers, centers via their teachers. So when we did our CDA programs, it's not about going out and finding people who may be interested in getting their CDA, but actually working with teachers who are currently in the classroom and attracting them to the CDA program. I know several of the classes we did were also actually located in the neighborhoods near where teachers are teaching, because it's really hard after you've put in a long day with 2-year-olds to get downtown and, get to Columbus State's campus or whatever it is. And so we actually took our programs into neighborhoods. And that's something that I think we should continue to do. But more broadly, we're trying to take the next step as a city and as a county. We want to get ahead of the curve in what it takes to get kids ready for kindergarten. And that's a birth to 5 strategy. And policymakers in the county and the city are absolutely focused on that. If we don't get serious about it, we're going to really regret that fact in 10 years. I think we have an opportunity to do some of the best work in the nation right here in our city and our county if we understand our imperative is truly birth to 5. The science is clear about that, and as policymakers, we should keep up.
Thank you, Chair Brown. You answered my next question, but I'll have another one for you. That's okay.
Okay, great.
So you talked about the importance of birth to 5, and I think we all agree to that. A lot of this work, I think, is being done already. How do we align it? How do we reorganize what we're doing?
Well, if I knew the answer to that, you probably would have a $96 million budget. I think we're all of us. As of us in this room and on the stage are trying to figure out how to align that work. And as a council member, I'm out in the community a lot, right? And I'm talking to parents. I actually do a fun office hour series called Meet Me at the Playground. So we don't meet during the day, in the library. We come to the playground on a Saturday, and hopefully that's a way for more parents to interact with their council member and find time to get their civic engagement in while their children play on the playground. So I talk to a lot of parents. There is a high level of stress for every parent with children, pre-school age, just about what they can afford. And I think we hear it out there in the refrain. National policy debates going on right now. I know that the Democratic presidential debate is coming right here to Columbus in less than a week. And many of those candidates have important childcare plans. And I think the refrain you hear a lot is, it's parents can't afford it, parents can't afford it. And that's right. Parents can't afford it. The average, I don't know the numbers for Columbus, but the average cost of childcare is $9,500 across the state, and $9,500. But the average wage of a woman is $31,000, and more we have single, especially the people who need to work the most. We have single-headed households, and so the math just doesn't add up. And we all know this. But the fact of the matter is that it actually doesn't cost enough. right? We actually need more money in the system. We need teachers to be paid more. We need good ratios. We need quality environments. We need the utmost safety, right? So at the same time as parents can't afford it, also we actually need to make it kind of cost more. I think you all know what I mean when I say that. But that right there is what presents, I think, the public policy challenge, which we have to be up for.
Thank you. Representative Russo. I know protocol says that I need to call you representative, but I'm going to call you Dr. Russo for the purposes of this crowd. What are you most excited about, or what are you most proud about on the direction of early learning policy in the state?
Well, I will say that we haven't had a great track record in the General Assembly, the last few General Assemblies in this space. In fact, I would say this has probably been one of our largest policy gaps in the last two General Assemblies specifically. In this current General Assembly, I mean, I think we have an opportunity because we have a governor who has come in who clearly is very focused on early childhood, birth to 5 years, has a huge interest in this space in terms of improving birth outcomes, improving health care for children. And then we've also seen some indication in the budget as well as in the governor's State of the State speech in increasing the federal poverty level cutoffs for publicly funded child care vouchers. We were at 130 as of October 30th. We will see some increases of that up to 150% of federal poverty level. However, I caveat that in this past budget that we just passed over the summer, that was not new state money, that was reallocated unspent TANF money. And that is a problem. And frankly, we need to be much higher than that. And so I hope at least in the next budget cycle, we will start to move towards that, but that is the start. I will say, so that has been some progress. There's much more opportunity for us. And I'll say on many different levels, when I talk about this, particularly in the current environment in the General Assembly, there is a huge emphasis on our workforce shortage issues. And so how do we get more parents into the workforce? And this is, how do we increase the supply of quality child care providers? And, this is really across all income levels. And we also, in many of our communities, we're very focused here. My district is in Columbus, and we have many center-based care facilities. But when you get outside of this region, it is very much focused on home-based care facilities. And these are they're all small businesses. So what can we do in our tax code to incentivize these small business development and growth, and incentivizing providers to open up new center-based care, to open home-based care services? I think there's more opportunity for that. How do we put more money in working parents' pockets through tax credits, through certainly for publicly funded child care, getting more people qualified for that. And then I think building off of some of what Councilmember Brown spoke of with the CDAs, because again, this is an investment in our workforce. We've got a lot of opportunities in this past budget and under the current administration in increasing workforce training. And we need to make sure that these programs are in that pipeline as well. So I would say, there's been a little progress. There's lots of room for growth and movement on this issue. And I think certainly with the Children's Caucus and, frankly, more women who are in the General Assembly at this moment who have made this a priority issue, there is opportunity to get us refocused on, I think, more productive policies in this space.
Thank you, Dr. Russo. Now, you mentioned that we are behind some other states in our early learning policy. I'd love to ask you why you think that is, but I think we'll just keep moving forward. But I mean, New Jersey's ahead of us. Oklahoma's ahead of us. I mean, so it's frustrating. Now, you also mentioned some things that you feel the state's next steps are. What are the things that the state's not looking at, or what are we not doing, or what are we not going to do?
That's a good question. And I think that is something that I think we're all eager to learn from the experts as policymakers of where we have opportunities that maybe we're not looking. I think this, what Councilmember Brown mentioned, frankly, we're not spending enough on child. It's too expensive for what we can afford. But we're also not spending what we should be spending. And how do we tackle that? That's a tough question. And, this is where we reach out to our experts in the field to help us guide. And I wish I could sit here and say to you that there is more evidence-informed policymaking that's happening at the state and federal level. But that has not happened. And I think, it should be happening. And this is an opportunity for those of you who work in the field as providers, as experts in the space, to advocate and work directly with policymakers so that we are making good decisions and growing in the places that we need to.
Thank you. Jamie gave me some other questions I'm supposed to ask the group, but I have one of my own I'm going to ask, and I have the floor, so I'm just going to ask it. Dr. Birchinall talked about in her talk about FADE. And Dr. Justice mentioned kindergarten. Maybe next year the whole symposium theme will be about kindergarten. So if we work on developing a 0 to 5, birth to 5 system, and we have high quality early learning in pre-K, what about half-day kindergarten programs?
Are you asking anybody?
Anybody? Sorry, yeah, anybody. How does that contribute to the FADE? Or, does it?
Half-day kindergarten should not be a thing. I think that, look, I'm actually not an expert. The great thing about being an elected official is that there's always someone smarter than you can ask who knows what they're talking about. But I will tell you that the fact that the state of Ohio only reimburses for half-day kindergarten is really not okay. It just absolutely isn't. And actually there was education reform back when Ted Strickland was in office, where he tried to change that, close that, make it full day everywhere. And politically the state changed, and I don't know all the answers for why, but that should have happened back then in 2008 or whenever it was that he proposed it.
Thank you. I was actually working in the Strickland administration at the time, and when this came up, people went crazy. My in-laws attacked me and said, "What do you mean you're going to do full day kindergarten? We don't want that." So I think Director Bivens wanted to answer that question.
So, kind of touching on the first question, first I agree with Councilmember, it should not be a thing. We require parents who receive publicly funded childcare to participate in some type of work participation activity, right? So when they don't meet that work participation activity, then we have to sanction them. So since Franklin County is the largest county in the state of Ohio, we kind of drive that work participation rate for the state on a federal level. And if we don't meet that rate, then Franklin County receives a federal sanction that comes from our agency. So currently right now we have about 10,000 parents that cover this 23,000, 27,000 children. I don't know how parents who are working, especially some of our most vulnerable parents, because we know crisis and jumping on buses and those types of things, just managing the day-to-day, I would not even know how to manage with a half-day kindergarten program. I have kids in college and I can't even manage getting home every day, right? So I just think that is something that, we should be expanding, and there should be reimbursable rates, higher reimbursable rates if we are going to continue on with that.
Thank you.
So I have both a personal perspective on this. I've had 3 children go through half-day kindergarten as a full-time working parent, and it is terrible. It is not at all conducive to working parents, for sure. And you spend an extraordinary amount of money getting them into care both before and after half-day programs. Even with a regular school day, you spend an extraordinary amount of money on before and after school care. The reality is in this state, in general, when we think about education funding, we are completely underfunding our public education system. And it is something that unfortunately we have not been able to wrap and to tackle in almost 25 years at this point, after, I think, since the Giroff case that said that we were, constitutionally underfunding our education system. I have had some hope in this General Assembly that we would get there for fair school funding. I can say that for many of these school districts, the reality is they don't have the building space and they don't have the money to invest in the teachers or a place to put students if they are doing full-day kindergarten. And as a state, we simply we have not made public education our top priority. And that is the reality of both the revenue that we are generating, and if you see some of the tax cuts that we make that decrease the revenue coming into the state, as well as the spending that we're doing. Even in this last budget cycle, or this last budget that we just passed, while we did have some money for wraparound services for students, the reality is we didn't decrease the base funding going to schools. And so until, as a state, we are putting forth the money and investing in education, public education, in a way that we should be, I think it's going to be extremely difficult to tackle going from half-day to full-day kindergarten.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? We good? Okay. Next question. We know that there are huge achievement gaps in kindergarten readiness based on race and socioeconomic status, sometimes as high as 30%. Are we expecting too much of our early learning providers in closing these gaps? Question for everybody. Gina, you want to go first? I'm sorry, the director?
I think if we are paying I love our early learning providers because that's the foundational start for children. But what we're paying people and expecting them to do is just not realistic. It's just not. We're entrusting people with our most valuable assets, and we're paying them $9, $10 an hour, right? And they make tremendous impact. But I do believe it is a big lift. I believe that we need to make sure that they have the supportive services within the centers. If it was my preference, which please don't tell my bosses this because I'll get fired, I would put a case manager in every district of every learning center to ensure that and I think my JFS staff is in the room. Shout out to the JFS staff from Franklin County. Appreciate you. Because I want to make sure that Gina's parents have what they need without jumping 20 buses to get to my center to sign up for food stamps, cash assistance, medic, and all these other things. So I think if we're going to require this, we need to make sure we put supportive services so that they can do the best job that they can, because it's not their job to alleviate poverty and to work with the most vulnerable in this instance of moving them up the economic mobility ladder.
Thank you. Anybody else want to touch on that one?
I don't think any of us could say it any better. I think that's exactly right.
Absolutely. A follow-up question to that, though. What else do we need? The director mentioned having case managers in all these centers. What else? James Dye's here from Columbus Speech and Learning. I just got to meet him today. Screenings, those types of programs, referral services, anything else that helps our kids succeed. Jeannie, you have a time limit.
That's fine. So I think that in regards to this space, if you are doing quality, you are doing these things. But the ability to have the partnerships and what those partners are able to do are limited. So we have made investments in someone like Columbus Speech and Hearing for about 17 years now, to have them come in and do screenings, assessments, and the start of therapy for our children who are behind, because also when you are working with families from low socioeconomic status, they also cannot get on 12 different buses to go to 14 different appointments. And so all of the things that you can bring into the center to be a wraparound for families is really what you need, but then having access to that and having, for example, Nationwide Children's Hospital is a great partner, but the wait lists are 12 and 14 months to get kids into services. We cannot all be successful without this kind of infrastructure that supports a child and a family. And so quality, again, but those partnerships are also taxed, right? And so it's this kind of ripple effect of what stressors then become on each of the centers.
Director Bivens?
I was going to say, if anything else, I would add to that is trauma-informed care services, because many times some of the families what we're dealing with is, maybe their trauma isn't that they saw their mom get beat up or someone shot, but their trauma is they didn't eat that morning, right? And providers are trying to, manage the center, and I'm seeing a lot of children being suspended on behavioral issues. And when I found out a 3-year-old could get suspended, I'm like, well, what did they do? Did they steal someone's bottle? I mean, I didn't understand it, right? But now in this space, I get it. But I do believe that there should be some type of resources designated to providers for trauma-informed care training.
Thank you.
Just to pull that thread a little more too. I mean, I think that, so your question a moment ago about, are we putting too much on, these teachers, these centers to solve the gaps? And I mean, the answer is yes, obviously we are, and it's on all of us, and it can't all be solved through an early childhood education master plan, right? I mean, we can have trauma-informed care, we can put case managers in, and all of that will mean we're doing the best. We are not going to solve everything because we need to address affordable housing issues. We need safe neighborhoods. We need to frankly address gun control in this community because too many kids are scared in their neighborhoods. There are all these interwoven issues to whether a child is able to show up at their school door ready to learn. So we of course are not going to be able to solve everything through one pathway. But I do believe that this pathway, improving our early childhood infrastructure, has the biggest return on investment. So we have to do the other things because a child is a full human. A child is not a one-dimensional thing that comes to school. A child is a full human in a full family. And we have to do as much as we can across our communities to address everything that holds families back, especially families of color. But the largest return on investment I think we can make is this pathway, this early childhood pathway.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown, you just mentioned families, and so that takes me to my next question. Are we focused enough on our parents or our family members and what they need to help their kids succeed and be kindergarten ready? And if we're not, what do we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the people in this room and the experts that I talk to, and certainly the people on this stage with me, are focusing on the parents, right? I mean, I do think that's where our hearts are, but the funding doesn't align there yet. And that's the opportunity. Right now we're doing what we can with the tools that we have, but we need to get to the next level and take that opportunity to ensure we're designing a system that, I was just talking to Gina about just issues in the last 24 hours, that she's facing at her centers to help get kids home safely. And our North Star needs to be the whole family in as many cases as it can be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will say I would agree that the funding doesn't align. Although I will say, when we talk about return on investment, we spend a lot of time when we're thinking about resources from a state level. There has been, I think, increased recognition that if we focus on these social determinants, there is big payoff in multiple areas. I work a lot in the healthcare space, and we know that some of the biggest impacts we can have on health outcomes is by addressing some of these social determinants. And the same thing applies to if we're thinking about, how do we make impacts in our criminal justice system? How do we make impacts in this childcare space and our workforce issues? So I think there is increasing recognition that we have to deal with housing, we have to deal with transportation, we have to deal with making sure that people have livable wages, that those are solid investments in individuals that have multiple returns in multiple areas. And I think certainly this early childhood, early learning space is one of them.
Thank you. How important is it to get our providers stepped up to quality? How important is family engagement?
It's extremely important. again, if today was 2020, and Bart won't let me quote bad numbers, so I'm going to go with, because we've gotten 197 centers star rated since we've been doing these trainings, and we have a street team out. We have about 15,000, so that's probably going to cover about, 6,000 of my families, my parents, Bart. But I want to share this really quick story. We have a street team that goes out every 3 or 4 times a day, knocking on doors, trying to get people into a pipeline, whether you go to Action for Children, Future, I don't care where you go as long as you get your star. So they go into a center only takes 5 kids to receive publicly funded childcare. Administrator says, can I do this without really letting my parents know that my other parents know I'm taking kids with publicly funded childcare? And my question is, well, why is that? That's because there's a stigma attached to people who receive publicly funded childcare. So we have to only educate our parents, we have to educate our centers, and it's very important because if parents can't go to work, they're going to come flood my lobbies asking for food stamps and Medicaid, and I don't think anybody wants that, right? The other issue I think we need to deal with, and I'm going to be very honest with this, is the issue of racism. Something is fundamentally wrong when you have the same gender and the same demographic of young people always falling behind. We can program around it, but until we deal with the systemic issue of racism, we're still going to have these same issues. Our policies need to change as it relates to housing. Our policies need to change as it relates to some other workforce issues, but we really have to deal with it because the neighborhoods that the kids that I service predominantly live in poor neighborhoods, and a lot of those kids are kids of color and predominantly are women who are servicing these children.
Thank you. Anybody else on that question? If not, Jamie, I have a couple more, but do you want to open it for questions? Because you want to open it up for questions? Okay. Oh, well, certainly.
Sorry, I'd ask anyone on the panel, just seeing that. Do I have a loud enough voice? So I'd ask anyone on the panel, seeing that this is sponsored by the Crane Center, if you could get data, what kind of data do you need or would be helpful for you as a provider or a representative in the public sector, in the county, that would be helpful for you to learn about early learning or quality? What kind of data could be helpful that Laura could help you with?
Can I ask that question? Because honestly, thank you, Tanny, for that question and I don't know this, so excuse my ignorance. Have we ever tracked, I'm sorry, I have to speak into the microphone. Let me not break rules. I'm sorry, protocol. But has there been a tracking of students who receive, who've gone through a quality learning system all the way through high school, broken down by demographic to see where their success rates are and where they're at now?
Okay, so the answer is no, because we haven't had the recording systems that allowed us to do that in the past.
Okay.
So now we're starting to assign an ID to 4-year-olds who are going to pre-K, so we can actually follow them into school and know. But in the past, we haven't been able to do that.
Okay.
I would just say for me as a state lawmaker, one of the reports that I was very interested in reading that kind of led me on this path when I first came into the General Assembly was the Center for American Progress, I think, that had the what are the childcare deserts. And I think certainly Ohio was included in that study. And one of the things that came out is the way that we capture data in the state of Ohio, we have a really difficult time distinguishing between 0 to 5, 0 to 3, really narrowing in on what are our biggest gaps in terms of supply and access. And for me, that would be incredibly valuable. And there are all kinds of conversations we have to have about how we're collecting data from various state agencies to feed into those systems so that we can get those valuable outputs.
Director Bivens? Oh, I thought you wanted to follow up. Oh, apologize. I'm sorry.
So from a provider perspective, Tanny, I don't know that there's specific data. What would be wonderful is if the Crane Center could help advocate on behalf of providers that the data that we are collecting is in one central location, because for every funding type that we get, we enter data into so many different systems that the administrative burden that's put on organizations just for that alone is so overwhelming that it is, and no one is doing it the same way, right? So I think that advocacy at the state level for that, as well as then for early learning providers that are not the school district to actually have access to our data. We do not ever get anything in return showing where our kids are, where they're going, what happens, because we don't have access to any of those, any of that information. So those are, from a provider perspective, that's where we could use help and advocacy, because we can't show or prove any of the work that we do. And we say we are high quality. We can show internally that we are high quality because our kids are making strides. But over the long run, we don't know how that continues. So.
Yeah, those are all really great things, and in general, as a policymaker, I want to know how much it costs, right? I just what does it cost to really do this thing we're talking about, and then what are we forgetting? I don't know that these are actually things you can research, Laura, but I think about. Even when we have a good system set up that parents are able to access, life happens in between, and we are not set up to accommodate life happening for families. And so, I wonder about how many employers have sick care options for their employees, right? So that if actually the last time I was on this stage, I had taken my son to daycare that morning. I was coming here for a morning talk, and they told me I couldn't bring him in because he had been sick the day before, and I just totally forgot that rule. It has to be 24 hours. And so I lugged my, I think he was 15 months. I lugged my 15-month-old baby up here, tried to give a speech. He was grabbing at the microphone the entire time, not having it. But I had the flexibility to do that, is really the point of that story. Other people didn't understand the point of the speech at all, so we might have lost a little that morning. But I have the flexibility to do that. Most parents do not. So I guess there's what's that? There's the child care circle, the supports for the families, and this concentric circle around we can't divorce what's happening in the workplace for families from what's happening, in the center for kids. And again, I don't know if that's a research question, but that is something that I think about, because if we have an opportunity to make this good, then let's think about all of it and where we recommend. Yeah.
Thank you. One more quick one, please. Real quick.
So I know this isn't going to be popular, but I disagree with all-day, everyday kindergarten. And have any of you been in all-day, everyday kindergarten classes? They are not ready, at least lower socioeconomic schools. As someone who was a school nurse for 8 years in a poverty-stricken area, we see increases in kids who do not know how they're well socialized because of government funding. Kindergarten teachers no longer have aides in the classroom, so they have 26 kindergarten students, and it can go up to 28 to 30 contractually until a certain date, but no one's giving them any relief from that. We're getting students who've watched just as you said, who've watched their families die from opioid overdoses, who don't feel safe in their communities, with huge problems. Little ones whose were abandoned from 18 months on and lived in an apartment while mom went out and pimped herself out. And until we have the resources in place to properly do kindergarten all day, it can't be just because it's convenient for mom and dad. I would like to see the research myself on school districts that haven't gone to all-day kindergarten every day, and I bet you'll see that these little ones are learning about the same. Because unless we have trauma-informed care, unless we have social workers in there, these kindergartners are getting expelled left and right. And we're not prepared at the district level. If the state wants that and they think it's great, that's great. And it's great for policymakers to say that to make their constituents happy. But however, until you've gone in those buildings and you've seen the stress that those teachers are under, I mean, and what wellness activities are we putting in place to make sure those teachers are covered? But I've seen it firsthand since it's been put into place, and I don't agree with it.
So can I just, and then I think that you touched on it. I think when you look at those neighborhoods of poverty, of who's being impacted, if you put the right infrastructure in place, then it will work. When I look at the data of who's being impacted predominantly, and I can look at Franklin County, right? I have, for years, kids of color continue to fall behind, and they're in the poorest district. So, which tells me there's something that we are missing, and I believe that, all-day kindergarten for parents would be successful if we put the right infrastructure in place and they had the same resources as some of our more wealthier districts.
Because are they
So-
going to learn more if they're getting in trouble and spending half the day with me in the nurse's office because they can't behave?
So let me touch on a couple of things that you've said. Number one, I absolutely agree. We've got to have the funding and the infrastructure, and we've got to put forth the funding as a state if we're going to require that to do this well. I will say, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, because I am certainly not, this is not my area of expertise of research, but the highest impact of full-day kindergarten is actually on our lowest socioeconomic students. Those are the ones that have the most benefit. And, this has certainly been a battle in some of our more mid to upper income level school districts, and we've talked about this, because you do start to see the returns fall off as you get into higher socioeconomic status. So, but the biggest impact are in those students with the highest needs. So I'd push back a little bit on that, but certainly recognizing that there are more challenges. I will just say that personally, and having had children go through these programs, the opportunity in a full-day kindergarten versus a half-day kindergarten program, there is more opportunity for play and for some of the extra things that I think are so critically important that we're losing in our kindergarten programs when we're condensing the state requirements that we have, academic requirements that we now have, into such a compressed time. We're losing recess. We're losing the opportunity for the kids to go and do the specials that they have. So, in that respect, I think full-day kindergarten is very beneficial for this age group because we can incorporate more of the play-based learning.
Well, that was not a quick question, but thank you for that. And I think we are about out of time. I just wanted to say, again, since I have the floor, does everyone realize how lucky we are as a community to have Tanny and Laura here in Central Ohio? Tanny's generosity and passion for this, and Laura's world-renowned. Every time I talk to her, she's like, yeah, I just got back from Vietnam. I'm helping them do early learning. I'm like, who does that? So thank you very much.